Welcome to FYI. This week we're at the Tower of London, where a new installation of 30,000 ceramic poppies have just gone on display to commemorate the 80th anniversary of VE Day.
In this special episode, we are looking at the events that have been taking place around the country for VE Day, and why marking this occasion is still so important.
VE Day stands for Victory in Europe Day, and marks a moment towards the end of World War II when fighting against Nazi Germany came to an end.
From 1939 to 1945, countries around the world fought against Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany and its allies such as Italy and Japan. It was a devastating global conflict. Millions of soldiers and civilians died, were injured or displaced because of the fighting. But on the 8th of May 1945, Prime Minister Winston Churchill announced to the people of Great Britain that fighting in Europe was over.
Today is Victory in Europe Day.
The news was greeted with huge celebrations. In London, crowds gathered at Trafalgar Square and danced into the night. And all over the UK, street parties were held to celebrate peace.
And to mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day, there have been events held all around the UK this week.
A huge RAF fly-past roared over Buckingham Palace. His Majesty the King and other members of the royal family took part in special events, and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer hosted a tea party at Downing Street.
And we know that many of you have been enjoying your own street parties, like this one in West London, where we spoke to some of the young people taking part.
I think it's important we celebrate things like VE Day because it almost is a symbol of hope for not only those undergoing conflicts, but also those undergoing any form of prejudice in anywhere across the globe. So celebrating where we've overcome stuff like that, I think is very important for us to evolve as a society.
This is my great-grandfather, and he was a bodyguard for the Queen in the Royal Company of Archers.
My grandmother, she did plane spotting, so she would stay up at night and look over Birmingham and try and see if she could spot any Nazi bombers. And then if she did, she'd signal to other people around that she'd spotted them. And so she was really in charge of protecting Birmingham during the Blitz.
I don't think the world will ever be 100% peaceful. I think world peace is a very unlikely event, but what we can do is learn from history and work towards the goal of different countries and cultures working together to create a better world.
Christian Lamb was 19 years old when World War II broke out, and she went on to play a key role in planning top-secret wartime missions. Today, she's sharing some of her memories with two of her great-grandchildren. In 1939, she was a student living in France when she learned that the war was about to begin.
I received a telegram, which was the sort of thing that you did in those days. The bomb said, "Come home at once, war is declared." And so I immediately volunteered to be a Wren, because my father was in the Navy, and the Wrens were the Women's Royal Naval Service.
What did your dad say about you joining the Wrens?
I don't think he minded in the least bit. He was glad to see me doing something I wanted to do.
For part of the war, Christian was posted at a secret command bunker in London, from where the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, ran Britain's war effort. Here, she made detailed maps for the D-Day landings, where Allied forces invaded mainland Europe. Her maps showed where Allied ships needed to go and allowed the soldiers to land safely.
What happened when you met Mr. Churchill?
I never did meet Mr. Churchill, but I did occasionally see him, because when I came into work in the morning, I occasionally used to see Mr. Churchill on the stairs.
Even after 80 years, her memories of living in London through the war are still incredibly vivid.
I endured being bombed by the Germans, which I didn't much like, but it was quite interesting. because eventually our people were fighting back and firing guns at them. So they had what we called in the sky dogfights. And there they would see them fighting each other. And we were down below watching. And another time we were sent home from work, and on the way home we saw a cinema which had a film we all wanted to see. The next morning went on our way to work, and the cinema had completely disappeared. There was a hole where the cinema had been. So we'd missed being bombed by about 5 minutes.
So what was your experience of VE Day?
It was the end of the war. It was a marvellous, wonderful day. There would be no more people going away and being killed, which is something very much to be thankful for.
To recognise her service during the war, last year Christian was awarded France's highest and most prestigious medal from the French President Emmanuel Macron.
It's a very exciting moment, as you can imagine. They all clapped madly at us, and I couldn't believe that they were clapping me. He came over and gave me this medal and kissed me on both cheeks. Imagine, I was very proud of Monsieur Macron. He's now a friend.
There are so many tales of heroism and bravery from World War II. It's sometimes hard to separate fiction from reality. Take this next story for example. We've seen reports online that suggest German and American soldiers apparently fought on the same side during one battle in the war, despite the fact that the countries were on opposite sides of the conflict. But is there any chance this could possibly be fact? Find out later in the show.
The 30,000 ceramic poppies that have just gone on display here symbolise the sacrifices made by so many during World War II. But why is it important to remember events from so long ago? Well, Sam has been finding out.
World War II was a conflict that changed the course of history. Today, millions of families around the globe still have stories of how it affected them, and mine is one of them.
My great-grandfather, Alan Stenning, joined the Royal Navy Reserves before the outbreak of World War II as an ordinary signalman. This meant he knew how to communicate with Morse code, flags and semaphore. As Britain began preparations for war, Alan was called up to fight. He saw naval action around Europe and he was sent to Malta, where he stayed and even commanded his own ship until the end of the war.
I'm very proud of my great-grandfather and how he served his country. I can't imagine what he went through and the sacrifices he had to make. I wonder how his experiences in World War II compare to being in the armed forces today.
People our age aren't old enough to join the armed forces, but we can join the cadets. It's one of the oldest and largest youth organisations in the UK, and they work closely with the armed forces to help young people build skills and learn about military life.
Can you see these tubes?
Yeah.
This is the altitude, which is how high you are, and we're at 1,400 feet going down.
This is so cool. I've come here to a cadet training facility in Surrey to find out more about what it's like being a cadet and what they think of World War II, 80 years after it ended in Europe.
I always wanted to be an officer in the Royal Navy, and I thought the cadets would be a brilliant way to get into the life, into the organisation and get a bit more familiar with the environment.
Do you have any relatives who fought in World War II?
On my mother's side, I have, I think it's a great-grandfather called Leslie, who died in the Merchant Navy. I'm very proud. I mean, having a relative who fought for king and country and freedom that we all enjoy today is very, very moving for me.
Why do you think it's important to remember VE Day?
Because you have to remember your history, your background and your country in general, and who died for you to live. They gave their today for your tomorrow.
Visiting the cadets, the Minister for Veterans reminded us that people not much older than us gave their lives in World War II.
What they fought for were all of the freedoms that we enjoy. The fact that I'm here and can say what I want to you and you can ask me any questions you want. The fact we have the freedom of speech, men and women fought to protect the freedoms, and that's something we must never forget.
My great-grandfather fought in World War II. Do you think there's any chance that my generation will have to fight?
there's every chance that we'll be called upon to protect those same freedoms that your granddad fought for and to protect in the Second World War. So I think we must be prepared for any eventuality should it happen.
The cadets here are having a great time today, learning about what life in the military can be like. But it's clear that continuing to remember the people and events of World War II is vital to ensure that the lessons learned from that time aren't forgotten.
So, what did you make of the unlikely story that US and German soldiers actually fought side by side during World War II? Well, it's actually true. On the 5th of May 1945, just days before the war ended, a US tank battalion teamed up with German soldiers who were fed up with fighting for Adolf Hitler. They came together to defend Itter Castle in Austria from another group of German soldiers who were still loyal to the Nazi cause and wanted to attack the castle. The unlikely German and American alliance managed to hold off the Nazi attackers until reinforcements could arrive. 3 days later, fighting in Europe was over.
Well, that's all we have time for here at the Tower of London, but we'll see you next time for more of the news that matters to you. Bye!